Good afternoon. This is Shaga Sisulu. I am uh, coming to you live from Johannesburg. We're awaiting the mayor. He's just in another room finishing off a press briefing. The press are accosting him with questions. Everyone wants to know what this Africities thing is all about, which is exactly why we're having this chat here today. So when the mayor comes in, we get right into it. I'd like to hear from you what some of your questions are. We want to jump onto Twitter and pull out a few questions and pose them to the mayor as soon as we get into our little dialogue. So the hashtag for you to use is Africities. So like Africa and cities, Africities 2015. Hashtag Africities 2015. Please send any of your questions. Nothing's too dumb. If you're asking what is Africity, yeah, that's what we're here to find out. What is Africities? What's it about? How do we benefit wherever it is that you might be in the world? And if you're a Joburg citizen, how can you get involved? These are the kind of things that we're going to try and find out from the mayor, and these are the kind of questions that I'd like to get from you guys. So, in a moment, we kick off. Thanks very much for being live with us right now. Let's get right into it. Let's see what's the time. All right, we'll try and keep this short and sweet. Because we need to get you out of here. So, guys, are you ready? All right. So, hi everybody. I'm here with the executive mayor of the city of Johannesburg, Mr. Parks Tau. Thank you very much for being here with us. And we're going to be talking to him, talking to you all about Africities, the Africities forum, which the city of Johannesburg is hosting next week, I believe.
Well, the summit takes place from the 29th to the 3rd of December, so 29th of November, which is Sunday, will be the opening ceremony and speeches and the opening of the exhibition. And our sessions will start on Sunday afternoon up until the 3rd of December.
Okay. So let's take it back a bit. I mean, you're talking about opening ceremonies, speeches, sessions. What exactly is it all about?
Well, you know, Africities is the main summit of local authorities on the African continent. It has different sessions, political sessions. It has the conference of the United Cities and local governments in Africa. It has sessions where we network and interact with our ministers, particularly on the African continent, but also sessions where we interface with our counterparts from different parts of the world. Would be having our counterparts from Turkey, from China, amongst others, and would be building networks and partnerships with them.
Okay. It's a bit like a Salga for Africa.
United Cities and local governments in Africa is exactly that. It is the association of local authorities on the African continent. It's the representative voice of local authorities in Africa, but also the instrument through which we're able to network and build capacity of our local authorities on the continent.
How many cities, or let's say how many different people from how many different cities across Africa are coming to this summit?
Well, so far we've received confirmation of registration of just over 2,000 people. And the reality is that we've always anticipated that registration will increase in the last 2 weeks. So we anticipate that there would be a further increase in the number of delegates that are registering this week.
What is the maximum that you expect? I mean, how many people can come?
Ballpark figure, we're looking at a maximum of 5,000 delegates.
5,000. And it's going to be held at the Sandton Convention Center?
It will be at the Sandton Convention Center from the 29th of November to the 3rd of December.
What's the biggest issue that you plan to tackle together?
Well, I mean, I think there are a number of issues. The first is about positioning local government to implement the new role that local authorities are now assuming in the development agenda internationally. So we'd be reflecting on the fact that in Addis Ababa earlier this year, the world agreed on a section with regards to financing for development on the role of local authorities. So it means that local authorities would now have direct access to international funding to implement their own local programs. This is a new regime. Yes. It's a new platform for local authorities to assume a different role. At the United Nations General Assembly in September, a section in the Sustainable Development Goals, the 11th goal, is on local authorities. So it's a new period for local governments in the whole world, so to say, because our international leaders, our governments, are acknowledging and positioning local authorities as instruments for implementation of the international programs and agreements that are being reached.
It's like the rise of the city-state.
Well, it's the rise of cities, and I think it is an acknowledgement of the reality that our cities are really the bastions for implementation. This is where really the rubber hits the road, both literally and figuratively. This is the reality that our cities are responsible for transport planning and implementation. Our cities are responsible for land use planning and implementation. Our cities are responsible for the provision of utilities, water, electricity, sanitation. Our cities are responsible for managing urbanization. And in a continent that's urbanizing at a rapid scale, this role for local authorities is assuming a much more prominent position.
Johannesburg getting involved, hosting this particular summit, how did that come about?
Well, when we were in Dakar in 2011, the South African Local Government Association, in agreement with SARO, which is the Southern Africa Regional Organization, both affiliates of Africities suggested that Johannesburg submits a bid. And it was important because it's in a period where the unity was being cemented of local authorities on the African continent. We had gone through a period of almost a decade of disunity between local authorities on the African continent. And when we met in Dakar, it was the first point at which we were able to come back and build a single consolidated leadership and develop a single program that would be implemented. And it was agreed that because, in fact, Johannesburg and Dakar played such an important role in facilitating this unity, that it would only be important that Johannesburg assumes the next role of hosting so that we're able to cement and consolidate this unity of local authorities in Africa.
Okay. So aside from, I guess, increased amount of traffic, what does it mean, this summit, for someone like me living in Johannesburg?
Well, it means in the first instance, building partnerships with our counterparts. You know, we always say that local authorities are instruments of civic leadership. These are instruments of communities to lead themselves. So when we look at our local councillors, these are local people that represent us and enable governance through local systems. So Africities says that we should shape the future of Africa with our communities, in fact. So we would want to create platforms for entrenching partnerships with our local communities in implementing the Africa 2063 agenda. And from that point of view, it's a very significant statement, not just as a theme for this conference, but as an outcome for the conference, so that when we go back as our respective national associations and local authorities, we can go back and say the collective program is to go into communities and cement the program that we're implementing. That's the sort of partnership that we'd want to inculcate throughout the continent in terms of the relationship that we should be building with our communities.
How do the, I suppose, people or the delegates manage any contradiction between a program that is developed at Africities for the different cities and their own national interests?
Well, in many ways, our interests are interlinked. If you think of a city like Johannesburg, almost 15% of the people of Johannesburg now come from across sub-Saharan Africa. This has grown from about 3.9% in 2001. This is a significantly different city. It's a cosmopolitan city. It's a city that should be able to enable and facilitate that all the peoples that reside in the city are able to access its services and are able to contribute towards its growth and prosperity. If you think about it, the most successful cities in the world are those that attract migrants. If you think of a city like New York, more than 50% of the people of New York were born outside New York. If you think of a city like Dubai, more than 80% of the people who live in Dubai were born outside the United Arab Emirates. And they came there and they are contributing towards growing this great city. And the reality is that, in fact, we can't see ourselves in any different way. I came back from Accra this morning and I met many South Africans who are there, who are contributing towards growth and development in Accra, who were part of the Mo Ibrahim Conference on Development, who say this is the contribution we're making to Accra, but we're not just making a contribution to Accra, we're making a contribution to surrounding cities and countries that are able to benefit from the relationship with Accra. And you're finding that throughout the continent. It's the same that happens here. When we meet prominent business people, many of them stand out as people that were born outside South Africa. And it is this level of relationship and interface that we need to acknowledge as people from across the continent and leverage from each other. Because the most important thing we should achieve out of this summit is to cement a relationship where intra-African trade is able to be consolidated. That's why we're having a session where we're convening the large strategic cities on the African continent to say, what role are you going to play in intra-African trade. So how do we facilitate between Kinshasa, between Accra, Johannesburg, Cairo? What roles are they going to play? How do we enable our citizens to leverage from each other, our economies to leverage from each other? How do we enable trade and logistics between our respective cities? Because where does logistics take place? Logistics is happening in cities. This is where trade really happens, and it is important for us to ensure that we can reach out to Addis in as much as we can reach out to Marrakesh.
As a citizen of one of the cities and really interested in what you're saying, making contributions, perhaps wanting to cement relationships and trade with other cities, big cities on this continent, how would I get involved with this Africities summit? Am I able to come as a delegate? What are the opportunities for me and other citizens to get involved?
Well, we've done two things. One, we've created a platform because we also understand that many citizens do not have the resources to register. So we've got a section where we've allowed for community and community organizations to register so that there's at least a voice for community organizations to be able to participate. But there are many who are business people who would want to participate both in the exhibitions and conversations who are still welcome to register and participate as delegates. Because the reality is that we see it's a summit. It's not just a conference of local authorities. In fact, if you think about it, the session of the mayors only takes place for half a day. The rest of the days actually takes place between various delegates and organizations and institutions that want to build partnerships with.
Well, I mean, let's get a question from the social media space as we get towards the end of this. But quickly, Mr. Mayor, while I look for a question, do you want to run us through the general program? I know you said the first day was for speeches and welcomes and so on and so forth, but just give us a much more detailed view of what we can expect at the summit.
Okay. On the first day, we'd be having Her Excellency Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the chair of the AU Commission, who would be the main speaker at the opening session. Of course, would be having welcome address from ourselves as the City of Johannesburg, from the chairperson of the South African Local Government Association, the president of United Cities and Local Governments in Africa, but also laying a platform for conversation. So we'd have Professor Sal almost giving a response and laying a platform for participation in the discussions, using the discussion and research document as the base document for conversation that would be taking place. Then we'd start having thematic sessions, and those thematic sessions would range from dealing with urban poverty to dealing with matters of social exclusion and social inclusion, xenophobia, and those sort of issues. We'd have sessions that are looking at economic development, on job creation, on urban agriculture. We'd have sessions that are looking at climate change and development. We'd have sessions that are looking at implementing the Sustainable Development Goals and the role of local authorities. So those are thematic sessions. We'd also have sessions with partner organizations, ranging from the AFD, the African Development Bank, to partners that would include international partners, OECD, as a potential partner and partner organization with the work that we do. We'd have sessions with them. We'd have sessions with UN Habitat that are looking at urbanization, urban development, and urban governance. So you would have those sort of thematic sessions. And then we're having parallel sessions between our own local authorities and our counterparts internationally, as I said, some of them with our Chinese counterparts, some of them with our South American counterparts, some of them with our Turkish counterparts.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I think we've been exceedingly efficient in our chat because we've covered the bulk of the questions that I found being asked. And I think from my side, I'm really excited to have unpacked this upcoming summit with yourself, as well as opportunities to get involved. So thank you very, very much for that. Are there any parting shots, any last words you'd like to share with us in relation to this or anything else?
Well, thank you very much. We'd like to encourage the people of Johannesburg, the people of the continent, in fact, to contribute in different ways. There would be social media platforms to interface with the summit and conference, and we'd really want people to feel that this is their conference. We see this as a platform for local authorities to make their contribution. In many ways, we accept that our local authorities are the foundations from which our countries and continent is built. And we need to build the capacity of these local authorities to assume this role. And we think that Africities gives us that sort of platform.
There you have it. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Mayor. There you have it. That's Africities Summit. It's an occasion where the delegates from different cities, your city, are going to be discussing the best ways for them to run these particular cities and make our lives increasingly easier. Thanks very much. I'll see you there next week.
Thank you. Thank you. It was just